Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to podcast number 6. We actually have an amazing guest today. Would you like to introduce Baby?
This is Baby the Chihuahua. It's another fishing show's mascot.
Podcast number 6. Let's do this.
This isn't another fishing show. This is another fishing show.
Well, Pete, we're doing this podcast number 6, in my sunroom.
We're out of our element.
Yeah, and this is our little Chihuahua that my wife and I are taking care of. My mom's Chihuahua, so this is kind of uncomfortable for me, so I'm gonna put her down right now. But let's just start this podcast. What topics do you want to discuss today?
I don't know. That's a great question. So we just kind of winged it today. And
did we wing it last week?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did. We just kind of were consistent, I guess. We have to get accustomed to our surroundings, first off. And then second off, we kind of have a plan today. So we keep running into this situation where we try to do a podcast and then we try to go fishing afterwards.
Right.
Because we're about 2 hours apart from each other. So it's a bit of a to-do to try and find each other. So we figure if we're going to get together, let's do a podcast and a fishing day. What we've run into previously is we start really late, and then we end up not getting out to the lake at all.
That's right.
So this is the first time, maybe the second time, we've actually done a day podcast that's going to be maybe followed by some fishing. And today we're going to go fishing where?
We're going on the Horseshoe Chain of Lakes. And the Horseshoe Chain of Lakes is by Cold Spring, Minnesota, and it's legendary for having just a ton of channel catfish in it. And we're gonna there's still ice on the lakes up here in Minnesota. There's plenty of ice on the lakes up here in Minnesota, so we're gonna ice fish for channel catfish.
Yeah, and I've only caught one catfish, ever through the ice, and it felt like a shot in the dark. And that was down by Rochester.
And how big was that channel cat?
You know, I didn't get a measurement, but you saw a picture of him. In fact, on one of our previous podcasts, you mentioned that catfish had a nice body.
Right. Yes.
So whatever.
I noticed those things. It wasn't a skinny catfish. It had good genetics, I would say. It was eating well. You could tell it was eating well. It's kind of like me. You can tell in the winter I eat well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
feel you, brother.
And then I go, uh-oh. And then when it starts getting warmer, I go, uh-oh, I need to get in shape because...
Yeah, I don't ever get that feeling, but I know what you're saying.
Although I don't know if I've ever been in shape, but I just feel that way. Like I need to get in shape.
I'm soft.
Yeah.
I'm soft all year.
So the deal is, where you fish for catfish, they seem to have, I don't know if there's as much competition, so they have they can get bigger there, it seems like. But where the Horseshoe Chain Lakes, where we're going to try to go to today, if we can get this podcast done, is it's got a ton of channel catfish,
right?
A ton of them, and so they're competing with each other. And in general, they're kind of more skinny, but there's a lot of them. They fight like hell. It's just a lot of fun. And
the Horseshoe is actually a river system that has some small dams on it that backs up, isn't it? Like it's like 3 or 4 lakes, kind of.
Right. So there's a dam at Cold Spring, and what that basically is done. I think someone's here. I think my wife may have just arrived, which is great because we can ask her some questions about what it's like to be married to a superstar.
The dogs are on red alert, and I'm getting sun on my face now too. You see that? If I do this.
Are you really? Well, then you're just going to have to. There's a lot of things that can go
Greg has
wrong
some
here.
Skylights in the sunroom, which is an ironic name considering the sun is...
Isn't production a lot of fun?
It really is. It really is. And you told me before when the sun was coming in this window, well, don't worry, it moves this way, and I thought that was a good thing.
Right.
But now it's got to that sun window, and now it's hitting me directly in the eye.
Oh, well, yeah, so... we're just gonna have to roll with it, I guess.
Just gonna wing it.
What were we talking about?
We were talking about what exactly the Horseshoe Chain of Lakes is, and you were mentioning there was a dam.
So there was a dam that was put in long time ago, and it
for the sole purpose of backing up the lakes, right?
Backing up, yeah, that's my understanding. So it's the Sauk River that kind of it's a flowage kind of, and what they did by putting that dam in is they kind of My understanding is it flooded the river, and then it also flooded these lakes and kind of connected these lakes all together.
Right, because it's not a huge, impressive dam, right?
No, it's like a little overhead, like a low overhead dam. Is that what they're
so
called?
it must have been swampy, sort of non-farmable land.
That's. I did not research going into this podcast, but that's my understanding.
I just looked at some satellite images at some point, and that's the impression I got from what I saw. So
it's really something because it's a hell of a fishery. There's just not many places where you can catch so many catfish through the ice, and yet the locals up there don't really appreciate it.
Right, as with most places around Minnesota, nobody targets the #1 game fish in the country.
That's right.
But
That's right. That you're saying some people might find this hard to believe. You're saying that the channel catfish is the #1 game fish in the country. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I just said, and I'm going to stick to it.
Now, how can you? That to me is hard to believe. I believe it's the largemouth bass that is the #1 game fish in the country.
I hear you.
How are you telling me that the channel catfish is the #1 game fish?
Well, really, there's probably not a real answer to this.
Like, there isn't?
Probably not. I mean, how
Okay.
would you prove it? So, like, let's say there's a kid that shore fishes, and he's happy with a catfish or a bass,
Okay.
but he happens to catch catfish instead of a bass. Does that count as a vote towards the catfish being the #1?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I think.
So anyway,
yeah.
Well, just to get my sources out there, I believe, and I have a lot of catfish literature. You should see what my wife puts up with. But in my catfish library, one of my books says it, and I'm pretty sure it's the In Fisherman, like the Bible of catfishing. What was that first one they put out? In Fisherman. Remember they had one for each species?
Yep.
So they put out the Catfish one, just channel catfish, I think
Yeah.
it was. It was dedicated to the channel, even though it kind of mentioned flats and blues, and it really was like the science Bible, pretty thick, like an inch thick. And then later they came out with a 3-part series, as In Fisherman loves to market.
Pete's laughing, I think, because I'm looking at my dogs.
I'm kind of doing it, but I'm just laughing about the fact that In Fisherman's like, well, let's split this baby into 3 and triple our sales.
Oh, yeah. Well,
So one of them is
right.
literally, one of the 3, I believe, is just about boat positioning.
Okay.
A book about boat positioning for channel.
For channel
Well,
catfish.
for
Wow.
channel, I think they expanded the species. So then, then you've got a book about that's got the lakes and the reservoirs and the rivers in, so you can really split that stuff down. But anyway, what I was saying is my source, I believe, was In Fisherman for the catfish being the #1 game fish in the United States. God knows if that's true, or, I doubt there's a lot of serious polling going on, But they're probably just estimating, hey, every state kind of knows X amount of fish are being caught in our state.
Right.
So they can probably look at numbers and tally them all up and say, obviously, walleye is not, because as soon as you get out of the Midwest, the walleye kind of tapers off.
Right.
Largemouth bass is an obvious choice, but they probably not as many of them in the north.
Right.
But catfish kind of cover the whole spectrum. So.
That's right.
And we love catfish. We just since we've been kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing for me is, for ice fishing, there's not a harder fighting fish to catch through the ice, with the exception of a lake sturgeon,
Right.
where we're at. But these channel catfish up at the horseshoe chain, there's a ton of them, like I said. And so ice fishing, it's kind of, you're going to catch catfish, and they're going to fight hard. And for me, I can't justify going out and trying to find walleyes down here, through the ice, when I've got such great catfishing.
You really
near
do.
me.
And we talked about this before with Greg, who was kind of near Buffalo, Minnesota. The Mississippi River is kind of shut down right now. It's a infamous stretch of smallmouth bass fishing. You can't fish them right now.
Yeah, season's closed.
There's still plenty of ice. Today is like 45 degrees out. It's amazing, so you can see the sun cooking behind us. But there's still enough ice to drive cars up here. And, so the last kicker is we just love to catfish. So today is going to be a day of maybe getting me some extra catfish. You've probably done it 4 or 5 times or something like that.
Yeah, not enough. Yeah. It's sad because I haven't even told you this. I haven't even drilled a hole.
Yeah. I think I mentioned that on the last podcast to mock you, because you were mocking me about not knowing what to fish for. And I'm like, maybe you should just go fishing at all.
Yeah, no, I've been in an editing suite
in
my basement too much this winter.
Yes, I believe you said that in the last podcast too, after I commented on that. But but I digress. But I think part of why we haven't perfected this catfishing scene is because the whole concept is fairly new to us. We had late fished and early fish for catfish with zero luck, and we kind of just discounted ice catfishing. And the other thing is there's not a lot of known catfishing through the ice spots. You know, I really only know.
You're talking lakes to do it.
Yeah, right. Well, even rivers. I mean, who really fishes cats through the ice in rivers? I mean, just anywhere. I don't know of a consistent catfish bite, and that's where the horseshoe gets kind of unique, where it seems like it's a really busy place. They just threw a big gathering out there of teaching people how to catfish through the ice. Did you see that whole thing that was going on? Detro had something to do with it.
Yes, I did. I did hear about it.
It was kind of like a big informational gathering of there's enough fish out there of, hey, this is a new way to ice fish, or at least something to ice fish for you probably haven't in your life, which is, the majority of Minnesotans probably never have. And it's kind of becoming a thing. I don't know if it's ever going to catch on, but flatheads can't catch them in the winter. You can snag them by accident. I've actually seen a couple come into the boats and pool too. Have you been catching that? People are getting flatheads.
Right, yeah, snagging them. Sounds like.
I guess, is that what they're doing? They're snagging them?
I think there's a lot of walleye guys just dragging jigs, and I think they're most likely snagging them.
Picking them up that way. So, and I am thrilled for...
On accident. I don't think they're intentionally doing it.
Right. And I am thrilled for the catfishing season to start. Minnesota River, Mississippi River, Crow River, which is close to here. We grew up as kids. We lived right on the Minnesota-Iowa border. And one of our favorite trips was to go down to St. Ansgar, Iowa, which is just across the border, and throw a worm on the bottom, and we would just get carp and catfish. And before that, it was like bullheads. We were like, and then we get a channel cat, and we were like, what is this? It had spots on it.
Channel cat was a high-end species to us.
It still kind of is.
Because we growing up, we would love fishing for green sunfish.
It was sunfish or bullheads.
Yeah, and yellow bullhead. I believe there were yellow bullheads we were catching.
Probably.
There's 3 species of bullheads, I believe. But yeah, so we got into fishing by fishing for what people would consider trash fish. So when we caught our first channel catfish, it was like a legitimate sport fish.
Right. And we were just basically fishing where our bikes would get us to, and our bikes would only get us to sunfish and bullheads. So yeah, that kind of brings us back to those days of, wow, a catfish was such a huge victory for us. And that actually, the Cedar River that cuts all the way through Iowa now is a legendary cat fishery in Iowa, even though we're on the northern stretches of it. And it's kind of known as the smallmouth stretch up in Minnesota right now. It comes through Austin and heads to St. Ansgar. But I've seen, a lot of catfish guys praise the Cedar River, especially from the central part of the state when it flows towards the Mississippi. So kind of cool that we were there as kids and kind of learned our catfishing skills there. But
hey, can you see if I have a miniature dachshund who's right over there?
No.
You don't see her?
No.
Okay. Well, hopefully she doesn't have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, we've been having an issue. I think we've actually discussed that too, is Greg's been missing fishing time because of dog bladder issues.
I have,
or DBI.
Dog bladder issues. Yes, it's a chronic condition.
If you have DBI and you're fishing,
well, one thing I think that I need to impart some advice to people that are considering getting a dog or even getting a house. Okay, if you're a diehard fisherman, I would really advise you to do neither. Don't get a dog and don't get a house. Right. Like a diehard fisherman. Just rent.
Don't get married.
Don't get married. If you want kids, don't do any of that.
No job.
It's
you
detrimental. It's extremely detrimental, a job. But if you want to limit doing as many of those things that we just mentioned as much as possible.
It only gets worse in the summer too.
Okay. So fishing, if you want to be the best fisherman that you can be, don't get a house, don't get married, don't get dogs.
Friends are okay if they're fishing friends.
Exactly. I think that's possibly the best advice we've ever given.
I think so
on
too.
Another fishing show.
Right. I mean, that if there's, at least as far as fishing advice goes, which we don't give out a lot of fishing advice, which is the right thing to do. But we can give out that advice. Getting on the water, getting time in the water.
Well, here's
makes you a great fisherman, and all those things take away from it.
Exactly. So I've got this dog. I have this big American foxhound, and she's getting older. And now she can't hold it. She can hold it for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then you got to let her. My earpiece just fell out of my ear. But
and then she's like a fire hose.
yeah, and she's drinking water. I got to figure out my earpiece situation here.
There you go.
My dog is drinking water like crazy. She can't hold it. And so, honestly, it's like 2 hours and she goes. So, trying to figure out the logistics. My wife will work 12-hour shifts. The logistics of the dog and me going fishing and it's a real pain in the ass.
It set you back a little bit this year. Yeah, no doubt.
So,
and you guys, to be fair, you had 2 dogs, rescue dogs, which is commendable.
right.
And then ended up with your mom's dog.
That's right.
So now you're kind of in the 3-dog night world, and you
3-dog night. That's right.
Yeah, I just let that.
That
flow.
was nice. That's a band.
Yes. Yep.
Also.
And coming to Rochester, I think in like 2 weeks. But anyway, so you ended up with 3 dogs. Not really planning for it. Although 2 can even be excessive, But then one dog is kind of sad, I had 1 dog, and I was like, "But she might like having another dog."
That's why we got 2 dogs.
Mm-hmm. It turns into this thing.
I
it's like
advise
this.
if you want to fish, don't get any dog. You want your life to be as simple as possible
and selfish. You want to be selfish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the only way to be a great fisherman. That's why we're average fishermen.
The best fishermen that I've seen, okay, are incredibly selfish.
Is Kevin Vandam married?
He's married. He's got 2 kids, but he's a freak of nature.
Oh, that's right. He's got like twin boys.
And I believe he's got 2 dogs.
Wow.
So
he's got
that guy is on a whole. He's not even human.
Right. But essentially, we're saying it's our wives' fault that we don't catch more fish.
I don't know if I want to say that.
But you just said it. I'm just trying to summarize.
Well, so let's move on. Yeah, so
there
we're
must be
trying
other things to talk about, right?
Of course there is. Yeah, I mean the thing about this podcast is we said this a little bit on the last podcast, but we don't have to necessarily talk about just fishing. Obviously, this is another fishing show. That's going to be at the heart of what we talk about, fishing, of course.
This is a podcast about 2 guys that happen to fish that have very complex and intellectual lives.
Right.
And we can
deep
take
interpersonal relationships
right.
with going on that
hilarious.
I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about right now.
We're just trying to justify the fact that we may be talking fishing or not talking fishing. But I do like the idea of kind of leaving the catalog open to whatever. But I think naturally we always kind of come back to home base there. But
I think I do want to bring up one thing okay. So UFOs, I do want to get into this, okay, because I talked about wanting to talk about it at the last podcast.
Yep.
But I think we need to talk about, before I go off on a rant on that.
This should be good.
I do.
And by the way, we lost Stephen Hawking today, which is one of my all-time heroes.
So we're kind of nerds with space. Space-time. Space and time are one and the same. You might not know that.
Astrophysics. Actually, today is Pi Day, 3.14. Is anybody celebrating that besides me?
You're the only one.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. What is that even like? Why should I care about 3.14?
It's just pi. It's an equation that sort of unveiled the perfection of math.
Really?
Yeah.
And I hate math, though.
Me too. But it doesn't even make any
that?
sense. I mean, I like the idea that somebody is using pi to figure out stars.
Well, here's something. I got really drunk at Pete's house one time recently.
Mm-hmm.
And
I remember.
And I watched a documentary about black holes. Pete stuck around for a little bit and then he took off.
I'd already seen it twice.
But we were doing a podcast. It was late and I actually just crashed on his couch watching this black hole documentary. He watched it for a little bit. He'd already seen it. I hadn't seen it. He leaves. First of all, my mind is getting blown about black holes. If you don't know anything about black holes, I really, really want you to look into black holes, because what they will do, if you really want to have your mind blown, they will. Just the idea that black holes are a real thing. They're a real thing. It will just make you question your own existence and like what everything is around you, because it is so, my earpiece is falling out. It is so insane.
Black holes are crazier than the wackiest science fiction ever written.
And the nutty thing is, what I realized about black holes from that documentary is that...
Thank you, PBS and Nova.
Thank you. It actually was an equation that someone wrote down on paper over 100 years ago. It wasn't like people thought these things existed. It was just some crazy mathematician's like, I'm just going to do this crazy thought experiment, basically, on paper, do these equations, and he's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And he goes like, wait a minute, this...
And this was a guy, like, literally on the front lines of World War I, keeping notes in a notebook. You know, I don't remember what his job was, but it was an insane thing. Like, the idea had been proposed, and then this guy did the math for it, died, and never even got to see the evidence of black holes existing. And that's the other crazy thing. You can't see a black hole. It's black.
Right.
They're not observable.
Makes sense.
So they just have a theory through math.
But what gets me is that someone...
It all gets me.
Before that someone actually even... you know, like now we can see that planets or stars are orbiting around something really, really fast, and they don't, you know, but there's nothing that they can see that they're orbiting around, right? Like, we can now observe black holes, but what gets me is that there were mathematicians that thought of it on paper first, the idea of it being possible in physics or math.
Right.
And then it's like, so just think of the idea that it's so, something is so dense that light can't escape from it. Okay? And it warps space-time so much that essentially tell me if I'm wrong here, that time essentially stops?
Yes. It's kind of like an infinite point. I mean, it doesn't stop, but it gets infinitely slow.
Yeah, so it's...
no one really... All the properties of physics break down in a black hole, and that's really what makes them so fascinating.
If you're wondering about what your role is in life, why are you here, what is this thing life, why, you know, just watch a documentary on black holes, and you'll walk around the rest of your life going, this is what I do. When I see a documentary like that, it makes me appreciate just existing even more.
Amen to that. And, you know, as a fan of the outdoors, I consider...
Or are we bringing this back to fishing?
Maybe, but
Probably
I mean,
should.
As my human nature is, I'm a fan of the outdoors and I'm fascinated. Yeah, we have a dog on the move.
So we have my dachshund is walking around.
Oh, we're going back to the bed. We're
okay,
good.
Good. Hopefully
But as a fan of the outdoors, I consider astronomy an extension of my passion for the outdoors. I mean, what's more outdoors than the universe?
That's a great point.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's like my fascination. The reason I love fishing is through my passion of biology and science, which is why I love collecting turtles and snakes when I was a kid.
That's right.
Just fascinated by the existence around me of whatever, and that sort of extends to my love of astronomy and why I've got a great telescope and why that stuff is passionate to me. So, in memory of Stephen Hawking today, and if you've never read his book, A Brief History of Time. I may be speaking to the wrong crowd here, but I'm telling you, it's an amazing.
It's not the wrong crowd. You know, here's what
you can't read it all in one night, though, chapter by chapter. It's brutal on the brain.
Fishing has all kinds of people in it. Like, why would we just think that all fishermen are like, well, no, all I do, you know?
Fishing is a cross section of life.
Fishermen can be we can be anybody,
right.
You know, and there could be a fisherman that's interested in Stephen Hawking's teachings.
Sure, I am.
Of course, right. So I'm sure there's someone in our audience that is like, gosh, these guys are speaking my language.
They're speaking to me.
Or not. Hopefully there's one guy out there.
But rest in peace, Stephen Hawking. And on Pi Day, by the way. So
isn't it Hawking?
Hawking. Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, you said Hawking's.
Okay.
Hawking.
And another great movie, if you really want to nerd out, is The Man Who Knew Infinity. That's a movie that is based off of a student in England who could do exactly that, could analyze math and figure stuff out. And he thought he invented trigonometry until he got to college and realized trigonometry had been invented. if you can imagine that.
Oh my gosh.
It's like you say, it's like a different species of people.
I don't.
It's
yeah.
so far, like, it drives me nuts that those people aren't on the front pages of our newspapers every day. They're buried somewhere in the science section. They're constantly, like, knocking down these crazy walls of discovery, and it's just in our lifetime, you know?
Yeah. Meanwhile, those are the people that are making our lives better.
Yeah.
Typically.
Or
Or not so much when they decide to build an atomic bomb.
Right.
But for the most part, scientists are kind of helpful.
Other than the A-bomb, yeah. For the most part, it's been pretty good.
Yeah. I do want to say that I actually saw Stephen Hawking speak when I was a young lad in the Bay Area in Berkeley.
Pretty cool.
The epicenter of liberalism.
Right.
Why did I bring that up? I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Stephen Hawking was in Berkeley. My dad took me to Berkeley to watch Stephen Hawking, and I swear I was probably 12 years old or something like that. And so I was in the audience. I watched Stephen Hawking. He was in his wheelchair, and Stephen Hawking, if you're not aware, he had
Lou Gehrig's disease.
Lou Gehrig's disease.
And by the way, was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's at 23, was not supposed to live till 25, and he went on being a professor at Cambridge for 50 years.
Are we losing people right now?
Out of a wheelchair. If you keep saying it, it will. Otherwise, you just kind of keep going through. So you want to go somewhere else?
No. Let's talk about...
That's the most amazing part about that guy. Imagine, like, if you think you've had a bad day, imagine being put in a wheelchair, not being able to move any muscle in your body except twitch your eye, and then being a professor at Cambridge.
No, it is amazing. And Pete's getting a call.
Tennessee.
What kind of amateur BS is this?
What? I don't know. You seem like you just complain a lot when you could just be, being more positive.
Okay, I'll work on that.
I was just talking about it with Stephen Hawking. Like,
okay.
He took a negative and make a positive out of it.
Okay, that's right. Okay, let's work on this.
Okay.
Here we go. So, yeah, I think I don't know how to transition from this.
It's a tough segue out of how about Lou Gehrig into like baseball? Should we go there?
No. Let's try to bring it back.
Opening
to
day.
fishing.
Okay.
Okay. So we just did it's not a feature episode, but it was a interesting episode. It was a fun episode.
Yeah, it was definitely different than anything we had done before.
So I uploaded it to YouTube yesterday, and the hardest thing about YouTube is trying to figure out how in the hell do you title a video. And
this is where I get thrown under the bus.
Yes, Pete, you might see some tension here just because this is the day after I uploaded a video where I really threw this guy right under the bus.
What's it called?
It's called A Drunk Fishes with Pete Mena and Alex Perrick.
Right. So there was Alex Perrick, and then there was Pete Mena.
Right.
And then there was a drunk apparently fishing with him.
So
who played the role of the drunk?
You were the drunk.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So, but I didn't do it to be mean. I did it. I looked at the video. Okay. I edited the video and I said to myself, okay, what do we have here for this video? Okay, what sets this video apart from all the other billions of videos on YouTube?
Right, because the upsides were we have Alex Perrick, AP Bassing.
We want to get that name in the title.
Big YouTube stud.
Yes.
And then you've got Pete Mena, one of my personal fishing heroes, one of your personal friends, and before that, a fishing hero. So it's like
a muskie, well-known muskie angler, legendary muskie.
We talked about him at nauseum, I think, a couple podcasts ago. And so you've got these two guys kind of representing the old school world of fishing and the new world school of fishing. And then you've got us and Northwoods Angling. And the upside was we had all these people, different types of fishermen and all this cool stuff going on in one spot. But the downside was we only got one fish for the entire night. It wasn't that big of a fish with 12 people fishing. So what do you do with that?
So I looked at, Northwoods was great enough to invite us out there, and they had reached out to Alex earlier. So, it was just the fact that I was really hoping that, man, this was going to be an incredible night of fishing, and Alex would promote us, and because we're catching fish for his channel and yada yada yada. It didn't turn out that way. So I looked at what we had, and what stood out to me was the fact that you were having problems with the conclusion at the end. right?
Right. I knew
and it was, for me, I love that stuff. I think it's really, really funny.
What he means by me having problems with the conclusion is, and maybe I'll start a little bit back, but I had to do a little outro, like, hey, everybody, you know, like, so part of what we've done with our show so far, and something that I'm not even real familiar with, but I'm sort of catching on to it, I would say, like when the camera turns on, you got to have a certain kind of pizzazz, right? You know, like
this isn't actually how I behave in real life. I don't do.
This is, well, that's what I'm saying. Most of our shows are kind of...
You don't want to be boring.
They're kind of how we behave in real life, though, for the most part.
Well, I'm saying, yes, I hear what you're saying. You're right. So when you do, you have to... we'll get right back on this because I understand what... Yeah, I know. When you're on video, when you want someone to watch your stuff, you can't just be subdued. I mean, I don't want to watch someone who's like...
Yeah. Hey, thanks for tuning in. We're going to fish for crappies today. I have my friend Greg with me, and we hope to catch some crappies.
Right, that's boring as hell. Like, no one wants to, you know, people want someone who's animated, want to watch someone who's animated.
Right, and not only that, but the production should be sort of busy and, you know, not annoying, but, you know, keep it moving along.
So my last point is basically you take your personality's like here, right? You know, and you jack that up probably 15-20%
right
for video,
right,
or in radio.
And I still don't naturally do that, especially when I'm by myself and trying to make a video by myself. You have to remind yourself, you know, you got to have a little bit of fire, you know, you got to be focused on, you have to be imagining what is being seen on the screen. You're almost watching yourself back as you're processing it. So my first, like, and this was the great part about Pete when he was in there. So
Pete Mena.
Yeah, Pete Mena. There was a couple moments where you're like, all right, let's get Pete on camera. And all of a sudden, like, when Pete was on camera, it was like a pro's pro. Like, he would flip a switch, and he was like the most interesting guy. He was the guy I saw on TV. He was still Pete Mena, but he was like the guy I saw on TV that was just like, there wasn't a slowdown in what he was saying. He had a point. He went from point A to point B. He's keeping everybody in the house interested. He's being funny. And I'm like, I'm kind of admiring it because I'm like, wow, that's really impressive. That's, you know, because you're used to seeing that because you're filming a lot of people that are used to being on camera. But for me, it's always like, well, we're just going to kind of be ourselves and film it, so I'm not overthinking a setup or anything, right? And all this is leading into, you know, me trying to convince everyone that I'm not an alcoholic, I guess.
Basically, so my thought process on the night was, okay, I'm going to start off, you know, Northwoods Angling is doing their video and we're doing our video all in the same ice tent.
And Alex is doing a video in his own.
Yeah. So they're in another
right next to us. We can hear each other.
My thought process for this video was, okay, well, I've got two mics that I can use that go into my camera. So I'm going to have Pete Mena mic'd, and I'm going to have Pete Wagner mic'd. I'm going to start off the night just as the camera guy. But once Pete Wagner catches his sturgeon, then I'm going to give Pete Wagner the camera, and I'm going to take Wagner's mic, and then I'll be on camera.
I wasn't even familiar with that plan, but that's a good plan.
That was my plan, because I kind of just wanted to take the camera at first, set the tone, get everything set up, and get things that we, you know.
That would have worked out way better for me if we would have caught a bunch of sturgeon.
Yeah, and so we didn't. Pete Mena caught one. We wanted Pete Mena catch the first sturgeon, which he did, which worked out fantastically. I wish it was bigger, but it is what it is. Very interesting fish. But so since Pete was already mic'd, well, let's do, you know, Pete Wagner's already mic'd. Let's just do an intro. I saw an opportunity. Alex Parrott came in with Rebecca and Sam Sobey, I believe is he works as the cameraman for Alex.
And that's right when I had that moment of, I've been sitting here watching Pete be a super pro, and I just kind of been sitting there canning beers, but not really. Probably had a couple of beers at that point, which is the classic. I just drank 6 beers, but actually it was just a couple of beers.
I think you probably maybe have 2.
I gave away a lot of beers. I only had a 12er, but anyway. That was the first moment where, like, and Greg's just like, all right, can you do, I need you to do, and I'm like, oh my God, am I on right now?
Yeah,
like,
in looking back at the footage, I was throwing a lot at you.
Well, I just wasn't in that mode. I was just like, oh, I don't even know what the mode of the show was. And not only was I doing a setup, but then I've got one of my heroes sitting next to me.
Yeah.
and then I've got Blake sitting next to me.
There's a lot of pressure.
And then I've got, Rebecca and Alex and Sam, who I just met, and all of a
Right.
sudden it's like, okay, I got to go through everybody's name here, kind of explain what's happening. We hadn't even really talked about what we were making the show, so I'm just kind of chucking it out there. But initially, that one went fairly well. There was a couple of hiccups. I had to restart to ask Rebecca
You messed
her
up
name.
Blake Bednar's name,
Oh,
but I
right.
kept that one in there because it's like,
Yeah.
we don't, it's fine,
Just because we like poking Blake.
Yeah. But, so that was good. That was difficult. We had so many people, but I wanted Rebecca in there. I wanted Sam and Alex to come in because
And it's good practice. Like, I kind of looking back at it now, I kind of enjoy it. Like, I'm almost ready for the next time. Like, okay, if I get thrown in that situation again, I'm going to be ready as it approaches. Like, it's a weird thing to be, because you're almost public speaking. You're not just talking to the camera. You've got two cameramen in that situation. It was Jacob and you facing me with 6 or 7 people around me, just all depending on you to set the whole scene. And it wasn't annoying in the fact that I just got thrown into it. I just, looking back at it now, it's like, wow, that's actually a skill that requires practice. You have to kind of keep doing it, and then you have to watch it back and say, what's that look like, and is that acceptable for something that looks like on camera, what that looks like on camera.
It's basically the best advice I give to anybody that wants to be on camera, wants actually, to be worth, like, someone actually paying attention to watch you. Is you want to take your regular personality. If you're really boring, then you want to go up 25%, 30%. But like typically 10-15% more energy and, animated.
Right.
Talk with your hands, look directly into the camera and talk to the lens like, they're your friend. Like that's the audience right there. That's a person.
Right.
When you're looking at that lens, that's a person.
What's up, friend?
So,
It's like, and it's like you took some trucker speed, but you have to naturally sort of.
Yeah, it's like trucker speed. What is that stuff?
I don't know. It's like ephedrine.
Yeah, it's ephedrine.
Or
it's
Adderall or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
It could be Adderall too.
Yeah.
Well, what we're saying is just take drugs till your personality fits the camera.
If you can't do it naturally, take drugs to do
Not Tylenol,
No.
Take real drugs.
Trucker speed.
Yes. Whatever happened to trucker speed, I don't even know.
You're right. That used to be something like, I remember when we were kids, that was a thing.
I remember
that?
I remember my 20s, like you could take it and you could drink like a case of beer and it wouldn't affect you.
You know what it's called now?
What?
It's called energy drinks.
Yeah, really. Red Bull, essentially.
I almost had a panic attack.
Taurine.
I did, taurine and taurine. That's right. That's one of them. Mm-hmm. That's one of the ingredients. What do you call those things? Those 1 hour
5-hour energies.
Yeah, 5-hour energy.
Those things will. Yeah, they'll give you panic
attacks. That's trucker speed. It's liquid trucker speed.
Yeah.
I took one of those one time, and I started having a panic attack. I was like, why? I remember it was like 20 minutes after I drank one of those.
And it's like.
Yeah, I was like,
you could just feel your heart.
Yeah. I was like, why am I getting anxious right now?
Yeah.
Like for no reason.
There's no way that stuff is good for you.
Oh, it's terrible.
And I'll do it on some nights on the boat, too. Oh, we got some friends here.
So this is exciting. My dogs are barking, okay? And what that means is my wife is home. So if you're lucky, she'll get on camera and we can interview her what it's like to be married to another fishing show co-host, Greg Underdahl.
I would be happy to give up my seat to witness that.
Well, I guarantee you, most likely she won't stick around for too long.
She will not. But are you going to approach her with the idea of sitting down and putting on the headphones? Because otherwise it's going to be kind of weird.
No, we're not going to. It's not going to be long.
She'll be bent. You just bent over your shoulder. And
you can just like kneel right here. She'll sit for like, I'm talking. This will be like a 2-minute thing.
Okay, but I think I could still step to the side.
Or just sit right there.
Yeah, I'll just get out of the way.
She comes in.
It'll be a really awkward family photo if I was just kneeling between you two for 2 minutes.
It'd be, maybe we'd use that in the thumbnail.
You're right. It'd just be like the bottom of my head.
That's the thumbnail. So until she comes in, we'll just keep on rolling here. But what were we talking about?
So we're just trying to talk. So we were leading up to the point. I was kind of bringing up the fact that you mentioned I had issues with the conclusion of what Greg
So
he was talking about.
I thought you did really well with the intro. I really did.
Right, that's what it was, an intro, I guess, is what you asked
so it's
for.
an introduction, and then we go into our little...
And just to give you an idea of my mode of thinking, I was in this house with a ton of people, and had never caught a sturgeon through the ice. I since have. Watched my video, free plug for myself. And I was desperate to catch a sturgeon through the ice, and I realized as I'm in there with, 5 people, in our house, I'm like, there's no way. Even if we get 2 or 3 sturgeon, I may or may not to even get the real one in. Actually, I was on deck. I actually had a pole in front of me for the most part. But I was starting to realize, well, this is going to be one of those days. So here I am on the ice from 6 o'clock till midnight. I've got a 12-pack of beer. I'm just sitting in my chair. I don't really have a whole lot to do. The cameras aren't running full time. We're just kind of having a lot of fun off camera. Probably most of the fun we had was off camera, I guess.
Yeah, like, so what happened is you just, as the night got, the fishing was slow. So, and you were drinking beers, and then you had...
I was doing what every normal fisherman should do, by the way. And if you don't approach it like that, you're probably not living life to the fullest. Do I sound angry right now?
No, a little bit. Yes.
All right.
But I understand where you're coming from.
Okay.
Now, I'm wondering, we'll get back to this. I'm wondering if that was a false alarm. Once in a while, that does happen.
Yeah, Cinnamon's wondering that too. Cinnamon's not sure.
We may have had a false alarm. My wife may not be home. Sometimes they might hear, like, the little chihuahua will think that there's something outside, and she'll bark, and then it'll set everybody else off.
Yeah, and there's a good chance that maybe your wife saw my car and it was just like, oh my God, and then just like...
So she might just be hanging out there.
Or
she hears that we're doing
she might have drove right to the bar.
That's true.
She's like, what am I doing with my life?
Likely.
Yeah, so hopefully that's not the case.
So... Love you,
Jessica.
Pete has all these beers in him, okay? And now he's got to do a conclusion.
Right. And actually, it wasn't. I think what the kicker was is somebody had a bottle of, what was that?
Somebody had a bottle of Fireball.
Fireball, right? And I was like, wow, that first shot of Fireball tasted pretty good. And if you've ever drank Summit, it's a fairly rich beer. One of those IPAs that all the kids are drinking. Maybe not, but so I was feeling the beers, but I wasn't feeling like whatever. And then I took a swig of the Hot 100. It made its round around this fairly big ice house.
They call it Hot 100?
I'm sorry, what was
Fireball.
It called? Fireball. Hot 100 is the same thing. It's a cinnamon-based.
Okay.
So the Fireball makes its way back around to me again. And I'm like, you know what? That first one tasted pretty good. And I never drink hard liquor. Took another big swig just to stay warm. And it was a cold night, right? And yeah, so I think this is what started catching up with me leading into the finale. But although if I was sober, I'm not so sure I could even kill that conclusion. I doubted you might have had just as many great outtakes. But the fact that you had me on camera actually, taking shots essentially leading up to that conclusion really sort of brought the whole thing together.
And so with Pete messing up the conclusion so bad, and then I had the shot of Pete drinking the Fireball, to me, I'm thinking to myself, I'm trying to figure out this damn YouTube game, right? And how to title something and do a thumbnail and to get 1,000+ views. And I thought, what really was the standout part of that night? Like for me in this edit, like yes, your drunkenness and you messing up the conclusion.
Here we are with Northwoods Alec Perrick, one of the greatest professional fishermen in the world.
Pete Mena, yes.
This guy was a supernova.
But sure, let's bring it back to astronomy and supermassive black holes.
Full circle, thank you.
But I thought to myself, okay, what is going to get the most clicks on this video? Right. And I thought what I originally wanted to title this video was drunk fish. This is what it was. Drunk ice fishing with Pete. This is what it was. It was drunk. I feel drunk right now.
Yeah.
It was drunk ice fishing featuring Pete Mena and Alex Perrick.
Right. And Alex is a minor, I think, right?
Yes.
So you have that.
Excuse me, I just sneezed.
You have that going on, and then
I'm allergic to dogs.
And then it's like, hey Pete, do you mind? We're thanks so much for joining us on this fishing thing. Do you mind if we just title this so it looks like we're all wasted?
Well, so the way I wanted to title it, though, someone might think that I was saying that, Pete Mena and Alex Perrick were drinking and drunk on the ice. That was kind of the point that I wanted to, but if they watch the video, they would go, oh my God, what drunk ice fishing, Pete Mena and Alex Perrick. This is crazy. That can't be.
It's good clickbait. Yeah.
It's total clickbait. But then I started thinking to myself, well, you know what? Pete Mena, I'm going to have to run this by him first. And so I called him up.
Because he's legit.
He's legit. And I called him up and I said, hey, Pete, I got this idea for a title. You want people to click on your video. It doesn't matter. You can have the greatest video in the world, but if no one's clicking on it, what's the point? So I said, here's my idea: drunk ice fishing featuring Pete Mena and Alex Perrick. And he's like, yeah, he was really nice about it. He's like, yeah, can we title it something like a drunk seas or a drunk fishes with Pete Mena and Alex?
Oh, that was Pete's idea.
It was essentially Pete's idea.
That's good to know.
So I said,
and by the way, there's like 12 people there, and apparently I'm the drunkest, but it probably wasn't entirely the case, but maybe it was, I guess.
No, yes, you were the most drunk. No one else was drinking, Pete.
Okay.
So the interesting thing is that I thought, okay, so a drunk fishes with Pete Mena and Alex Perrick. I thought, man, that's a pretty good title. That should give us pretty good views. Well, let me tell you something. I'm about to just take YouTube and wring it by its neck because I don't know, we don't have that many views on it. So I don't know we can retitle the thing, put a different. I put a thumbnail of you taking a swig off the fireball, and then a little emoticon or whatever they call it. It looks like a sick face right above your head.
Yeah, it was like it wouldn't be on. And by the way, what happened in the conclusion? It was just me and Jacob and Pete, right? Wasn't it? And Blake was he?
It's all a blur to you, isn't it?
Blake was on the camera.
Yeah, Blake
so anyway,
was running the
I'm
camera.
just trying to say Northwoods angling, and I keep calling it Northwood angling.
Yeah, you were saying Northwood angling.
Right.
It's Northwoods angling.
And then so I got
over and over and over. There's actually stuff that I didn't even put in there.
Yeah, so it was 3 or 4 times, I think, right? Was that?
No, I mean there's at least 6 or 7 takes.
But after 3 or 4 times, I started getting to the point where like, well, now I don't even know what I was going to say. I'm just trying to get all the names right that are in the circle. And then so Greg captivated on that, and then kind of made it a funny finish to the video. Which I just want to read what Pete Mena left on Facebook. Now that I know Pete was involved in this makes this even sweeter. So did you see this yet on Facebook?
I think so.
The final conclusion. So. Pete Mena comments on the post on Facebook, LOL, poor Wagner, which I thought was really funny. That made me laugh. I hadn't even seen the video yet. I'm like, oh no, I can't wait to see what's going on here. So, and then Greg comments as another fishing show, under the bus. And then Pete comes back with totally trampled, complete with skid marks and thick smoke, which I really thought was funny. Now I'm like, I'm going to have to sit down and watch this video. You
haven't even seen it yet?
I hadn't seen it when this was going on. I had seen the thumbnail, but I had the kids alone last night. It wasn't like, hey, kids, you want to watch a video where dad's hammered, or whatever. And I didn't even really want to watch it. I was like, what do I, it's going to be hard to watch, which it was hard to watch, but it made me laugh. So I guess that's a good thing. So then I comment that more fish might have saved me, meaning if we caught more fish, maybe we're not focusing on what Pete's up to. But likely not, knowing the quote-unquote editor. That was my comment.
Yeah,
that's referencing you, because you probably
But you might remember, I told you that seeing how this edit was going, I'm like...
Well, you asked me, hey...
I said, dude, I'm going to throw you under the bus on this one.
Yeah, and
because
what am I going to say to that?
I basically, when I start these things, I might have an idea with... kind of how the night went.
Oh,
but
trust me, dude. As soon as I took off I had to give my microphone to Greg, and then he did the close, which, by the way, I didn't think was all that spectacular, but it was fine. Very stoic. He's just taking it personally. I'm the one that should be upset here. But anyway, so I gave my mic to Greg, and then he did the close.
Nailed it.
And I knew as I was passing the mic to Greg, I'm like, there's our episode. Like, I remember having the conscious thought, well, that was before I got Blake with the air horn, or after? That was after. So
that was way
So I already
after.
had Blake with the air horn, and I'm thinking, all right, well, the best 2 parts of this night, or I guess the 3 best parts. Pete got his fish. How are you going to make that into anything? It's a quick hit, but you can only do so much with it. So then it comes down to me hitting Blake with the air horn, which is also a quick hit, or this painful 10 minutes of me not being able to close out the show with any coherent statement.
That provided most of the content.
Well, it set up the name of it, the thumbnail, and then the reason most people watch it all the way to the finish line, which a lot of people seem to be entertained with it because fishermen should be able to relate to that for the most part, not catching fish and then catching too many bottle bass and then still, wow, I ended up having a great time last night. I never even caught a fish,
No, I knew, I like that stuff. I think we both have
great.
similar senses of humor. I think we probably have this exact same sense of humor.
Yeah, I thought that the idea of it, you kind of salvaged that whole thing. I thought it was a nice sort of interesting take on the evening because it really sort of represented the way the evening went. I mean, it's 6 hours distilled into 10 minutes or whatever it is, but there wasn't a lot going on. We all had a good time because we got to meet interesting people and talk about things, and I get to meet a good friend of yours who was also a fishing hero. So that part of it was one part of it. The other part was it was a bunch of guys in the ice house that were all professionals at killing time when you're not catching fish, and then you realize every fisherman is used to not catching fish. We've all been there.
Yeah, that's the thing that I wish more people kind of could see, and I keep on harping on this, but in my career, like that's, I've most of my career has been filming people fishing.
Right.
And very good fishermen fishing. And I wish people, especially people that get really hard on themselves, they're down on themselves because they got skunked or something went wrong when they went fishing, or they think because they didn't catch a fish one day that they're a lousy fisherman, or all kinds of different things that I've heard fishermen say. I wish they could see that even the best fishermen have tough days. And I've done a shoot with Kevin Vandam where he was struggling. It was actually a Major League Fishing shoot. And Kevin Vandam is put on a pedestal as the best angler that's ever lived. And I agree with that. But even Kevin Vandam, I'll never forget that it was this Major League Fishing tournament. It was like the guy couldn't, everybody in the field was doing really well. And it's like whatever was going on with Kevin, he couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
And so that's a tournament scenario, but I've seen it when I've shot for The Next Bite, for Bass Pro Shops, for Outdoor Channels. Some of the best fishermen, the best fishermen have lousy days. When you're going after another living creature that has its own agenda, you're never always going to knock the ball out of the park. You know what I mean? You're going to have days where you feel just like this is your first time ever fishing.
But it's important to remember it's a victory just to get out there. And that's usually the way I look at it.
Right. That's super important. I think as you get older, you appreciate that more.
Right.
Just the fact of the ability to just that you can find some time just to get out and
absolutely
and do it.
And by the way, is that clock correct right there? Are we approaching like 4:30?
That's probably correct. What does your phone say?
Which is going to put us on the lake at like 6 if we got out there right now, which gives me 2 hours of fishing essentially.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's
we're going to have to consider moving quickly here, I think. I'm just saying.
Are there any other issues, topics that you'd like to discuss?
No, not really.
Anything that's really have we covered the...
I wanted to cover the main episode because it's up now and I want people to see it. So
is there any... What made me go off on that tangent of not, it's important every fisherman has bad days, even the best fisherman. Why did I go off on that tangent?
Well, I sent you on that tangent talking about... I was blaming that on my beer drinking. Essentially.
Oh, okay, right. So yeah, to me, I thought the Maina ice sturgeon edit was a lot of fun. I thought Pete really, first of all, Pete Maina catching his first ice sturgeon was a big deal. I love that, just the fact that he was able to do that with us.
Mm-hmm. That was great. We'll be back.
And Maina totally gets our personalities, our sense of humor. Maina's a great writer. You saw that kind of with the skid mark comment.
He's a hilarious
He's
guy.
a very funny guy. And
he's a naturally
very clever,
funny guy.
Yes,
he's like a character that he's a character.
He's a character,
even if he's not a fisherman. He's just a character.
He's a character, and he's not afraid to be a bit controversial. He's named his. We just lost a GoPro. Sounds like we just lost a GoPro. It's fine. We have a GoPro that's possessed.
Yeah, we're wrapping up here pretty soon anyway.
We're just gonna wrap it up.
But he's a natural character with an infectious laugh and a great voice and a passion.
He's had, like I was saying, he was controversial before this Hero 3 Plus GoPro interrupted me.
There was our first technical difficulty.
It's production, man.
We
it's
were
production.
Overdue. Yeah.
He's had books out just calling Muskies suck. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it's a funny
and he's
funny cover too.
Yeah, I like just he likes to be honest. He's genuine, fun guy to be around. I think maybe we end this podcast, and I just want to do a little micro rant about UFOs.
I don't think there is room for a micro rant in you with UFOs. And also, have you done your homework this week on that footage that you're about to reference?
No.
Because there's more.
What are you talking about?
There's more, and it's buried in the newspaper yesterday.
What are you saying?
There's more footage.
There's more footage from
the Pentagon?
There's more
pilot talk. There's the same thing, but there's more footage. So you're going to need to do some reviewing before you embark.
All right, so let me just say a little bit. I'm not going to go into a rant. We'll do this next podcast.
I will do it.
I just need to set up. People are going, what are we talking about? That's all I'm going to say, and then we'll end it.
Okay, so give them some advice of what to research.
In the fall of last year, it came out that the Pentagon had a program that they actually investigate UFOs. And there's actually a dude that was in charge of it, and they looked into it, and that UFOs are a real thing. Okay? And the Pentagon released footage of pilots, aircraft, pilots with unidentified flying objects, and they're tracking all this stuff.
It was cool footage. And I'm somewhat of a UFO skeptic.
And they're admitting it.
I'm somewhat of a UFO skeptic, so I'm looking forward to Greg convincing me that this is all the real deal.
Here's the thing. I'm not. It's two things. Okay, but the thing that was driving me nuts is that it just disappeared off the face of the earth. There was nothing on the news anymore about it. It's a huge story.
It's weird.
It's a huge story. So there's either two things going on.
But that's the weird part. It wasn't a huge story.
It should have been a huge story. Yeah. There's more to this. We can get into it later. Okay, because we got to wrap this up in Catfish.
Woo.
But the reality is it's two things is what I've come to realize. It's either this is some kind of government shenanigans trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, or kind of disinformation, misinformation, something going on
X-Files.
Or it's actually real. It's actually there. These are real. This is a real phenomenon.
Well, if there's disinformation, isn't that sort of endorsing that they're real? Didn't you just say they're real twice?
It's the government trying to maybe say that they know something, or they have. This is a theory of mine. Okay, that they've witnessed things.
What would be their incentive to do that?
To maybe throw off an enemy, Russia, to make Russia think that we've got this technology or something, or I don't know. It's just so wacky. It's hard to wrap your head around it that it even happened.
Right.
Because
there's some funny characters in this whole story too.
It's a big. It's. We'll go into this later.
Right.
It's something that.
And has a passion for someone who has a passion for astronomy in general and the idea of life on other planets. It's always interests me.
But what gets me is that you don't think you're actually a UFO skeptic. You don't think you don't think that
See, you're getting into that part where you're not going to be able to end the conversation. But you need a bad cop to your good cop. And I would say I'm on the fence. Knowing the laws of the physical world, which I barely do, but knowing the laws of the universe, yeah, I have some issues with somebody showing up. Stephen Hawking has got some great comments on this, by the way.
You heard it here. He knows all the laws of the universe.
Yeah, in a very third grade sort of. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this podcast up. We're going to give you a teaser for next week. If you doubt Greg, he will get very angry. Greg didn't have any negative comments this week, which is really nice. And you can
didn't?
I don't think so. And you sort of repackaged that into making me look like. So hopefully the negative comments would roll in for me. They're kind of positive comments, but in a very passive-aggressive way. It's kind of a way of saying I'm, because they're saying, wow, you really get drunk. That's awesome, So well played there. You got me back for enjoying all those comments about you. But I would like to end this week's podcast with my catchphrase, which I forget. So if there's anything you would like to say before I do my... Okay, well...
No, you're... That's all.
All righty, and this is Pete Wagner signing off from Another Fishing Show podcast. And remember, folks, Don't leave your crawlers in the sun. We will see you next time.